more money off of the Turo cars that you already own? This is a topic that I've been thinking a lot about, not only because it's an interesting one, but because improvements for the purpose of making a better return on your investment is a conversation that's almost solely had in the context of real estate and is very rarely, if ever, had in the context of cars. Adding a pool, a kitchen, or a bathroom remodel, an addition. These are all common improvements that are done to a home, and while some improvements like a pool, for example, add very little tangible value to a home, others like a garage door replacement add a lot of value. While in some ways, Turo cars are very similar. And as Turo hosts, we can actually make more money off of our cars by modifying the vehicles that we already own. But similar to real estate, not all of these improvements are created equal, and some of these improvements will result in a better return than others. And so today I'm going to be breaking down which improvements you should look at making to your vehicles based off of an ROI perspective. Keep in mind that I'm basing these off of my personal experience, and I'm also going to be basing them off of either ROI or a better review. And I'm not going to be basing it off of the customer experience alone. There are going to be some controversial takes throughout this video that probably will no doubt result in a better customer experience, but will that better experience result in a better review than you would have had otherwise, or a higher earning vehicle? And that's the question that we really need to ask whenever we're talking about vehicle improvements and modifications. But before we dive into that, I do want to let you guys know that we're currently running a 4th of July sale on my course, the Car Sharing Masterclass, which is a course that teaches you everything that you need to know about starting and scaling a car sharing fleet. When you sign up for the Car Sharing Masterclass, not only do you gain access to over 7 hours of course content that's constantly being improved and added to, but you also get access to our private Discord and our monthly group Zoom calls as well. You can use the code 4th of July 150 to get $150 off the course. So with that, the first topic that I want to talk about is radio or radio interface improvement. This improvement can truthfully be broken into different categories depending on which direction you want to take with it. It could be a complex improvement like a whole audio setup with higher-end speakers, a fancy touchscreen, or it can be a simple improvement like just adding a Bluetooth radio to a car that didn't have Bluetooth previously. So there definitely is a line here that we definitely will want to take into account. Adding an improvement to your radio from a functionality standpoint is an improvement that I think is a worthwhile one, and it will result in more money. But if it's just to simply improve or upgrade the radio that you currently have without adding any additional functionality, this is where I think that this type of improvement simply isn't worth it. One trend you'll notice throughout this video is that improvements that result in you being able to expose your listing to more settings and features, these are oftentimes better than ones that don't. For example, Turo has the option to add features of your car, and amongst those features are things like Bluetooth, GPS, backup camera, Android Auto, Apple CarPlay. These are filters that people may search for, so being able to have your car pop up when someone filters Bluetooth, that is important and it is a worthwhile investment. But if you're taking a car that already has these features, like Bluetooth for example, and you're simply updating the radio to a newer one, this is where this investment probably isn't worth it. Of course, the exception here is if you're making a repair, in which case that's a different story. So while revamping your radio to set up a higher quality radio that adds no additional functionality, this is an improvement I would categorize as not worth it from an ROI perspective, but adding a radio that has Bluetooth or even adding an interface that supports a backup camera or GPS, these would be worth it because now you can select these features as available features in your listing. But of course, always keep in mind how much it's going to cost to add these types of features, because like any business investment, you don't want to spend too much money making these changes. For me, I would probably spend a maximum a couple of $100 updating the radio to an updated one. For example, with me and my cars, the max I would probably spend is $100 to $200 on a high-end radio, but in most of my vehicles, I just get a simple Bluetooth one and leave out the backup camera or the Apple CarPlay altogether. Next is tint. Now this may be a controversial take, but I personally don't think that adding tint to your vehicle is a worthwhile investment from an ROI perspective. In my experience, I've never gotten a complaint from a car with lack of tint, but I have gotten complaints for a car with poor quality tint that is bubbling or damaged. Tint is one of those things that while it no doubt provides a better experience, I don't believe that the lack of tint results in lower earnings, and I also don't think it results in lower reviews. Just as long as your vehicle listing doesn't show that the car has tint, and then whenever the guest gets to the car, it doesn't end up having it. If you do choose to get tint, I absolutely would not choose an expensive tint to install, as it definitely won't move the dial a ton whenever it comes to a daily rate. And while I wouldn't remove tint from a vehicle that I purchased that already had it, I also wouldn't add it to a vehicle that didn't. Next is overall vehicle condition, and I'm talking about wheel rash, seats and interior, door ding, dings, paint. This is one of those things that in my experience will vary quite a bit depending on the age of the car, the mileage, the price, as well as the type of car that you're renting. When it comes to wheel rash and small dings, I don't believe these are worth fixing. And I personally would say that this is true with both nicer cars as well as cheaper cars. If you have a vehicle that has small door dings or minor wheel rash, I would not recommend fixing these every single time this type of damage happens, unless of course Turo is paying for that repair. Minor wheel rash and door dings will not result in lower reviews or lower earnings for your vehicle, and getting these items fixed oftentimes won't move the dial on the daily rate either. Instead, what I would do, and I think this is especially true with nicer cars, I would wait until you have quite a bit of wheel rash and have a number of different door dings and get them batch fixed all at once. While this does result in you having to spend more money at the point in which the items are getting addressed, it ends up saving you money in the long run because your car isn't consistently getting blocked off to get these issues fixed. But truthfully, on older cars, like the cars that I rent out for the most part, I probably wouldn't get these issues fixed unless they were very severe. The one exception whenever it comes to this type of category is paint. I have found over the years that wear and tear with paint specifically gets scrutinized a lot more than minor wheel rash or door dings. I live in Texas, and the Texas sun is just brutal on my cars. I have over the years had a number of cars with bubbling and peeling paint, and this is something that guests will complain about. Last year, I repainted my Hyundai Sonata at Maaco for $800, and not only does the car look incredible, but after the car got painted, I was able to raise the daily rate from $32 a day to $36 a day. With no drops in bookings, guests leave better reviews, and the car gets booked out all the time, and it's earning more money. As a result of how well this Hyundai Sonata has been doing post-repainting, we're actually getting 2 other cars repainted as well. We're getting the hood of our Toyota Yaris painted, as well as the fender of our Ford Focus. If you have a car that you've noticed has a ton of fading paint, and this can oftentimes just be a weather-related issue or just poor quality paint at the point of manufacturing, but if you find that one of your vehicles falls into this category, getting your car repainted actually can be a worthwhile investment, and I think it is worth doing, but I would be very conscious about how much you're spending on doing this, and I would not spend thousands and thousands of dollars to get this paint job completed. With Maaco, we paid $800. We did set up a corporate account through our LLC, but the entire process was very easy, and I was blown away by the result. But I do know that if you were to go to like a real reputable high-end paint shop, it could cost tens of thousands of dollars to repaint a car, which is something that I would never even consider, and you should avoid at all costs. But cheap budget paint jobs like the Maaco route could be a great route to go down and could result in a ROI. But going the cheaper, more budget-friendly route like Maaco could be a smart move, and it definitely will have a return. Next is interior, specifically your seats. If you have a car in Turo, your interior is going to get worn. And while sometimes this can be the result of abuse, a lot of times it's just the result of excessive use. And so if you have a Turo vehicle that's rented out on Turo full time, chances are you're going to come across excessive interior wear and tear. So the question is revamping your interior worth it? And I think the answer here is it kind of depends. This is something that a lot of Turo hosts have a lot of different views on. Some Turo hosts are very pro seat covers, others are not. Some hosts will redo their whole interior once it gets worn, others will not. I would say I'm a bit in the middle. I would put interior work or really anything involving seat covers or seat investments as not an ROI category, so not something that you would buy in order to get a higher return on that car, but instead I would put this into the preservation category. It's a way to preserve your investment and preserve your car on Turo. And so with that in mind, I personally wouldn't redo my entire interior unless it was just absolutely trash, and I especially wouldn't do this for the sake of making more money. You see this sometimes where people get custom interiors to make their cars stand out, and this is never going to produce enough extra income to justify that level of expense. But if you notice that your interior is getting worn down, then replacing components of that interior or getting seat covers can absolutely be the right move, because a rundown interior will end up resulting in worse reviews. But there are multiple layers to this. For example, if you notice that one of your seats are ripped, maybe replacing the component of that seat that's ripped would be a good play rather than getting seat covers or replacing the entire seat. This is very common with Mercedes. The Mercedes bottom seat rips very often, and replacing it with a new one or a new seat cover for a couple $100 is a worthwhile move. These are like OEM seat covers, so they actually don't go over the old seat, they actually replace it, and they look factory. We have done this to both of our Mercedes because of the fact that both of them had the exact same rip. On the flip side, if your entire seat is worn down, you could look at seat covers. I'm personally not a fan of low quality seat covers. I think they look bad and they provide a poor guest experience. I just don't like them. Sure, they're cheap, but they also look cheap. Instead, what I've done in the past with multiple cars is I get seat covers that are actually designed to replace the old seat cushion, or we go over it so tight that it's basically a permanent replacement. We did this with my Toyota 4Runner. I also did this with my dad's 2006 Tundra, and we did it with our 2007 2007 Ford Focus, and all of these turned out great. These are more expensive. The cloth ones for my 2007 Ford Focus were, I believe, about $250, and they did take a few hours to install, but it was well worth it. And while it definitely didn't result in a higher daily rate, it absolutely did allow for us to keep this car on Turo longer because of the fact that the interior looked so much better. Another option could be to just do a deep detail of your vehicle and to actually pay somebody to deep clean the seats specifically. We've done this before with cars in the past, and this can make a big improvement for the overall looks and just feels of the car. In my opinion, I think that OEM and just the original seats are always best, so if you could avoid getting a seat cover by paying somebody to deep clean the car or doing it yourself, I think that that's going to be one of your best bets. Last but not least is wraps. I like wraps. I've been tempted to get one for my Tesla, but they're just simply too expensive, so I'm not going to. But I think in the context of Turo, a wrap just doesn't make a ton of sense from an ROI perspective. People justify getting a wrap for their Turo car as a way to make that car stand out. And while I can see where that thought process comes from, in my opinion, I think whenever people are looking at Turo, they're going to be looking at price as their biggest factor. And if you and another host in your market have the exact same car, but yours has a cool wrap and is 20% higher in price, I think the guest is still going to go with the cheaper car because of the fact that it's cheaper and technically it is the same car. Wraps have also gotten extremely expensive. These are no longer like $500 to $1,000, and getting a full-fledged wrap can be thousands of dollars. So I think from that perspective alone, it also doesn't make sense. I think the only scenario where getting a wrap would make sense is either A, if you're somebody who has access to get wraps for a pretty cheap price, or option B, if you want it as a way to protect the paint. For example, if you were renting out your personal car and you wanted to get a wrap to preserve that paint, I think it could be a good decision. But I would even argue in that case, it's not an ROI decision, it's more of a preservation decision, so it's not really in the same category. But if you're just a normal average Joe like me and you have to go to an actual company to get a vehicle wrapped and pay full price, I would not do that for the sake of making more money with your car on Turo. I think it's a waste, and I think there are better options out there. Now, remember, you guys, I do have my course, the Car Sharing Masterclass, which teaches you how to start and scale your car sharing fleet with the same business model that I use. And like always, I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, comments, if you have anything to add, I would love to hear it, so make sure to leave a comment down below. And while you guys are at it, make sure to hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit the notification bell, and I will see you guys in the next video.